What if I told you that during the 2016 US presidential election, while every major poll, every major newspaper, and every political expert on television was laughing at the idea of Trump winning, there was a market of ordinary people quietly pricing in a 40% chance he would become president, when the polls said 10%, when the experts said impossible? What if I told you that during the early days of COVID in 2020, while the WHO was still telling the world everything was under control, prediction markets were already pricing in a 75% chance of a global pandemic declaration? Weeks before it happened, what if I told you there is a system that has consistently outperformed governments, outsmarted experts, and seen around corners that the smartest analysts in the world completely missed, and almost nobody is talking about it? It's called a prediction market, and by the end of this video, you are going to see the world completely differently. Squeak, squeak, let's go. Okay, before your mind explodes, let's build the foundation. A prediction market is essentially a betting market on real-world events, but not gambling, at least not exactly. Here's how it works. Imagine a question. Will candidate X win the election? In a prediction market, you can buy a contract that pays out $1 if yes, and $0 if no. If people think there's a 70% chance candidate X wins, that contract trades at 70 cents. If new information comes out, a scandal, a great debate performance, a bad poll, the price moves in real time, like a stock. So, the price of a contract at any given moment represents the collective wisdom of everyone in that market about the probability of that event happening. Think of it as the world's most honest opinion poll, except instead of just saying what they think, people are putting their actual money on the line. And that changes everything. Now, here's where it gets controversial. Because what researchers discovered when they started studying these markets was deeply uncomfortable for a lot of very powerful people. Prediction markets weren't just good at forecasting, they were better than the experts, every time, almost without exception. I'll explain exactly why in just a second, but first, you need to understand one concept that makes this whole thing work. It's called the wisdom of crowds, and why it's terrifyingly accurate. In 1906, a British scientist named Francis Galton walked into a country fair. There was a contest, guess the weight of an ox? 800 people entered. Farmers, butchers, random fairgoers. Most of them had no special expertise. Galton collected all the guesses expecting the crowd to be wildly wrong. He was going to use it to prove that ordinary people couldn't be trusted to make important decisions. But when he averaged all 800 guesses together, the crowd guessed 1,207 pounds. The ox weighed 1,198 pounds. The crowd was off by less than 1%. Not one individual expert came that close. This phenomenon, called the wisdom of crowds, is the engine that powers prediction markets. When you aggregate the knowledge, intuition, and information of thousands of people who all have skin in the game, financial skin, the result is almost eerily accurate. Because here's the key. In a prediction market, you can't just say something you don't believe. You have to pay for your opinion. That filters out noise. That filters out overconfidence. That filters out political bias. What's left is as close to the truth as humans have ever gotten, before the truth actually happens. In 2003, the US Department of Defense launched a project called PAM, the Policy Analysis Market. The idea? Use prediction markets to forecast terrorist attacks, political assassinations, and geopolitical instability in the Middle East. The logic was sound. If thousands of analysts, researchers, and informed citizens could bet on potential threats, the market price would reveal which threats were most likely. In real time, it could have saved lives. But when the public found out, the reaction was explosive. Politicians called it a market in death. Headlines screamed that the government was letting people gamble on assassinations. The outrage was so intense that the program was shut down within 48 hours of being announced. Here's the tragedy. The critics completely missed the point. They weren't betting on attacks happening. They were using market signals to prevent them. But logic doesn't matter when headlines are on fire. And this reveals something deeper and more uncomfortable. Prediction markets are a threat to authority. Because if a prediction market consistently outperforms government forecasters, what does that say about government forecasters? If a prediction market outperforms media pundits, what does that say about media pundits? If a prediction market outperforms Wall Street analysts, What does that say about the billions of dollars we pay Wall Street analysts? It says they might not be as valuable as we think. And that is a very dangerous idea for a lot of very powerful institutions. Okay, we've talked about what prediction markets are, we've talked about why they work, we've talked about why they scare people in power. Now, let's talk about the part you've really been waiting for, the platforms that exist today, right now, where regular people like you, are making serious money by being right about the future. Because this isn't just theory anymore. This is a real, growing, multi-billion-dollar industry, and most people have no idea it exists. So where can you actually participate in prediction markets today? Let's run through the big ones. Polymarket. This is the biggest name in the game right now. Polymarket is a decentralized prediction market built on blockchain, which means it's transparent, global, and very hard for any government to shut down. During the 2024 US presidential election, Polymarket had hundreds of millions of dollars in volume. And here's the wild part, its predictions tracked closer to the final result than most major polls. People made and lost fortunes on that platform in a single night. Kalshi is the first prediction market to be fully regulated by the US government, specifically the CFTC. That's a massive deal. It means US residents can legally trade on it without the legal gray area that surrounds some other platforms. They cover everything from Fed interest rate decisions to weather events to box office results. Manifold markets. This one is fascinating because it uses play money, no real dollars involved. But don't dismiss it. The accuracy of Manifold's markets rivals real money platforms, which tells you something profound. People want to be right, even when there's no financial reward. It's a great place to start if you want to learn how these markets work without risking a single cent. A word of warning, though, and I have to say this clearly, these platforms involve real financial risk. You can lose money. Some are operating in regulatory gray areas depending on your country. Do your own research, understand the rules in your jurisdiction, and never bet more than you can afford to lose. This is hamster finance. We hype you up, but we never lie to you. So here's the question that keeps me up at night. If prediction markets are more accurate than experts, more accurate than polls, more accurate than governments, are we heading toward a world where the market is the forecast? Where instead of asking an economist what inflation will be next year, we just check the price? Where instead of trusting a politician's promise, we check whether the market believes them? Because that world is closer than you think. Here's where we zoom out and look at the big picture. Prediction markets are growing, fast, and the implications are staggering. Imagine a company that, instead of relying on internal forecasts from managers who are afraid to tell the boss bad news, uses an internal prediction market where employees anonymously bet on whether a product launch will succeed, whether a deadline will be met, whether a key hire will work out. Some of the biggest companies in the world have already experimented with this. Google, Ford, Eli Lilly. The results? Their internal markets consistently outperformed official internal forecasts. Imagine public health prediction markets where scientists and researchers bet on which diseases are most likely to cause outbreaks. Early signals that could give us weeks of warning instead of days. Imagine legal prediction markets where the probability of a court ruling is priced in real time, giving businesses and individuals better information to make decisions. This is not science fiction. All of these applications are being discussed, tested, and in some cases already deployed. The information age gave us access to unlimited data. Prediction markets might be the tool that finally helps us make sense of it. But, and this is important, prediction markets are not magic. They fail too. They can be manipulated by large players with deep pockets. They can suffer from thin markets, not enough participants to generate accurate prices. They can be wrong, spectacularly wrong, especially on unprecedented, one-of-a-kind events. The wisdom of crowds works best when the crowd is diverse, independent, and informed. When those conditions break down, so does the market. So treat prediction markets as one powerful tool in your arsenal. Not a crystal ball, not a cheat code. A tool, a very, very powerful one. Let's recap what you now know that 99% of people don't. Prediction markets aggregate the collective intelligence of thousands of people with skin in the game. and produce forecasts that consistently beat experts. They terrify powerful institutions because they expose just how often the experts are wrong. They exist right now on platforms like Polymarket and Kalshi, and they are growing at an insane pace. And they might just be one of the most important financial and social innovations of the 21st century. You came here today not knowing what a prediction market was. You leave knowing something that could genuinely change how you see news, politics, economics, and the future itself. That's what hamster finance is about. Not just money, knowledge, power, freedom. If this blew your mind, smash that like button. Subscribe for more content that the finance world doesn't want you to see. And drop a comment. Do you think prediction markets should be legal everywhere? I want to know what you think. Until next time, squeak squeak,